Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Pelvic Pulse podcast for a really special episode with my friend Emily, who has been a client of mine and has a really beautiful story, I think, and just a lot of wisdom to share. So I don't want to, give too much away right off the bat, but why don't you share a little bit about who you are? Maybe you can go origin stories a little bit where you're from or what it is you're wanting to talk about today.
Okay, thank you. Thanks so much for having me, Brittney. I'm Emily, and I'm originally from Maryland. I currently now live in San Diego, California with my husband and baby. I just had my first baby in November, and I'm I'm really excited to share about my birth story. So I birthed my baby at home. And it's kind of interesting because I went from wanting to schedule a C-section before I knew anything about birth. I was like the kind of woman who was like, just cut the baby out of me. I don't want
Mm.
anyone like changing my body. And then I went from that to I'm gonna go completely natural and have a home birth unmedicated. Um, so so I did that. Yeah, I birthed my baby in my apartment in Carlsbad, in my bathroom. My husband caught our baby over the toilet. Which is just it's like kind of a crazy story of how that all went from one to the other. So my background is in education. I was a teacher for a few years, and then I went from that to nannying kind of a lot back and forth. And then um, I also have a background in yoga and herbalism, and I'm a birth doula too. So I've just got a lot of like knowledge under my belt.
Totally.
Um, and it all kind of tied in my pregnancy as well. And I guess like where it kind of all started was nannying. I just saw these families and like a lot of dysfunction with the way that families were raising their kids and how I saw them kind of pushing their kids onto me. And it just seemed like I was trying to make a difference in these kids' lives. Um, and like in the family too. And it just felt like if I really wanted to make a difference, I needed to start with birth. So that's kind of how I got into
Mm.
the birth doula world. And once I learned about birth, so that was in like August of 2022. Once I learned about birth, it just kind of was like a domino effect from there. It was like one thing after another. I was like, there's no way I'm going to have a birth in a hospital. Like, no, I will birth my baby at home. It's gonna be me who does it, not the doctors who like pick they say like, oh, I delivered this many babies. And
Mm.
I learned so much about the hospital system that it really made me very passionate about working with women and having sovereign births. And I actually witnessed a birth in a hospital before I got pregnant. And then I already knew I was planning to birth my baby at home when I did get pregnant. Um, but just like my pregnancy was very holistic, and the birth was that's a whole story too. There's just so many things like wrapped into one here, but just to kind of like summarize before I go into any questions you probably have. Um, yeah, I think like having a sovereign birth that you are in your own power and um, you're connected with your baby and your partner, that's really where you make the difference in how the family evolves and comes together. Because in today's world, we see so much divorce, so much dysfunction, so many people who are just disconnected from their families. And to me, that's where we see change, is the way that we raise our kids. And I've seen it firsthand, and I've seen how it's impacted my relationship with my husband in our first 5 months of being parents and postpartum. Like, it's just been so blissful, honestly. It's been pretty challenging, but I think that if I did birth in a hospital and have a traumatic birth, um, it would be very different because I've witnessed that. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm about. That's what I'm passionate about. And um, that's what I'm putting back into this world
Mm.
with how I raised my son, and how I move forward as a mother in society. Um, so yeah, I don't know if you want to
Oh
branch
yeah.
off anywhere.
Girl, you said a mouthful, and I'm so thankful that you just touched on all these little pieces, because what I'm visualizing, and I wonder if anyone else can follow this too, right? It's like you sounded like you maybe grew up in a place and in a mindset of just do whatever you got to do, kind of like handing off some responsibility to a doctor, like just cut the baby out, that'll be done, just snip snap, clean it up, But
Hmm.
as soon as you got into just the birth doula education part, right? Like just being in that environment of learning about our bodies, right?
Yes.
And what actually maybe the physiological process of birth looks like. It sounds like
Right.
even before you became pregnant then, right? You made this decision like, okay, I'm going to do it differently.
Hmm.
And then you got pregnant, and then you went and were serving as a doula and
Yeah.
saw, okay. Because okay, what I'm hoping that you can do, because just FYI for anyone who doesn't know where I'm at right now in my life, like I have also been just learning so much, maybe not firsthand experience, but secondhand experience of, many of my clients go through these processes. And I do have clients who have had hospital births, who have had midwife births or free births. And it's been a range, and everyone's story is so different. But what I'm hoping that you can do, well, I'll finish my thought on myself for a second. The more I learn, the more I'm prone to be like, I don't want a hospital birth either. And it feels wild to share, but also, like,
Yeah.
yeah, the more you know, the more you might want to just do it a little differently. So,
Hmm.
um, if you wouldn't mind sharing, obviously without giving away your clients' details,
Hmm.
just painting the picture of what that birth in the hospital looked like to you, and
Hmm.
maybe how that potentially solidified what your decision was, which was to have a home birth. And if you had
Hmm.
any, and then we can go into like the details of your birth story and
Yeah.
all of that. And then, of course, postpartum. But
Sure. So my experience with becoming a doula is kind of like you take the training and then you start to serve your clients, and you get certified. Most women or doulas in general just they go the certification route, and that's what I was planning on doing. So I started out with one client, and like, spoiler alert, I didn't end up getting certified. Just that's a whole different story in itself. But so I started out with one client before I got my certification. I was working towards that at the time, and she really wanted to have a natural birth. And when we talk about natural birth, that can be different for everyone, but um, a lot of the times women will say, like, I want to have a natural birth, and they're meaning that they want it to be vaginal. Sometimes it means unmedicated as well, but vaginal is like a natural birth in, I guess, a lot of what people would say. And in her case, she wanted a natural birth, and she also wanted it to be unmedicated. And from my perspective, and just from what I know about the hospital system now, especially after witnessing that birth, I don't believe that you can go into a hospital and have an unmedicated birth. If you can, it's possible, but it's in most cases not really going to happen that way because there are so many interventions, and it's like the cascade of intervention, which you can learn about once you get pregnant. You can just kind of start to study like the different interventions that are happening very commonly in the hospital. And so she went from wanting a natural, unmedicated birth to pretty much getting all of the interventions. And I watched it kind of just go from one after the other. And to me, it was kind of traumatizing. It was just very like chaotic, and there were so many people in and out of the room, and you want this like peaceful, beautiful experience for the mom and her baby and this very new family. And instead, the baby is born, they're like aggressively rubbing him or her. It depends on, obviously what you're having. They're rubbing the baby, and there's bright lights and there's lots of people, and it's just like they're just trying to do all of these different things all at once. And so you're not really getting that peaceful golden hour that everybody wants, which helps with breastfeeding. And, on top of that, there might have been some things that happened that you didn't really want to happen. So you can see like just a whole range of perspective that happens in the hospital. But anyway, from what I witnessed, it was just, I don't want to give too much away because it was just not my experience to share, but I walked away from it feeling very kind of broken, honestly, like disheartened in what I had set out to do. I really wanted to be part of this experience. And then I walked away feeling like, I don't know if I can be part of this. Like it feels complicit in the system that just feels like it's trying to rob a woman of her experience as a mother, that we're all designed naturally to do. That's what our bodies do. Just like we have a period, we don't have to have a doctor tell us how to have a period. Most cases, women don't need somebody there to tell them how to have a baby. And of course, like, there's situations that are emergencies, true emergencies. That's what we're grateful for, the medical system. But in my experience, I had a very healthy pregnancy, and I just felt like I can do this on my own. And of course, I hired a midwife, so I wasn't entirely on my own. But yeah, I still experienced my own amount of birth trauma, even with a medical midwife, which is again like a whole different story. But I just think that birth is designed to be natural, and too many people in a room or too many other people's perceptions of what is supposed to happen can alter what the natural flow of events can be. And yeah, like if you're really interested in birthing outside of the hospital, what I would encourage you to do would be to start learning about the quote unquote cascade of interventions, because it's kind of shocking how quickly it can happen. Like you go in and they want to see you dilating quicker than you're actually dilating, and so they'll give you pitocin, and then you get pitocin and it starts becoming painful because pitocin is synthetic oxytocin. So the oxytocin is released to help with the pain from the contractions, but if they give you pitocin, then your receptors aren't telling you to release the natural oxytocin. So then the contractions start to get more painful. So then they get the epidural. And then after the epidural, you can get a fever. So then the fever, you get antibiotics, and it's just like one thing after the other, and all of a sudden you're getting all of these different drugs when you went in wanting your baby to be born just naturally, like
Yeah.
without any type of drugs. So that was really important for me. And that was actually what carried me through my 24 hours of unmedicated labor. Um,
Can you talk about that a little bit? Like
yeah.
what was your process like? Like when did your waters break or,
Hmm.
and when did the midwife come and
Hmm.
who was present, all of the
Hmm.
things.
So I was 40 weeks pregnant when I went into early labor, which was like a lot of start and stop contractions. Um, I was in early labor for 2 days. So I had 2 nights before I actually went into labor, active labor, of just like start stop contractions. And they were not so painful. Oh, I don't really like to actually use that word painful. Strong is the word that I prefer to use, just remapping that in the brain a little bit. But so they were strong enough that I couldn't sleep, but
Mm.
they weren't so strong that I needed my husband's support. So I was kind of laboring by myself for 2 nights. And then they would stop during the day.
Hmm.
And then they would, and that's common. Just nighttime is like you're more relaxed and there's less adrenaline flowing. So you kind of have the ability to just get those contractions moving. Um, my water didn't actually break. My midwife broke my bag of waters, which that's a
Mm.
different story. Um,
Yeah.
but so I was starting to go into more active labor after the third, like it was the third night that we had gone on a walk earlier that day, and I think that really got things kind of going. We were doing some of the like different positioning to help just like move things along because I was just like, when is this gonna happen? Like the start and stop contractions are mind boggling. You're just like, what's going on? Like, is this baby coming today? Is it going to be another week before we see the baby? Because that can happen too. And in some cases, like in that situation in the hospital, they would be like, oh, let's give you some pitocin and we'll speed up labor, or like we'll schedule a C-section. So you know, but for me, I was like, it's gonna happen eventually, but like, when is it gonna happen? And so that third night was when I went into active labor. Um, it got really intense and like the contractions were starting to come longer, stronger, and closer together, which is like the true sign of active labor. So we ended up, my husband was on the phone, I guess, texting our doula, and she showed up around like 1 a.m., I think. Um, yeah, like time itself, I have no concept of, but I can just kind of give you a little bit of a frame. Like it was the middle of the night that I was really in active labor, and it felt like it was going on forever, but also it went so fast because I was just kind of like in between worlds, as they say. And um, I think it was around like 7 a.m. that we ended up calling my midwife. And they came, but just for reference, like my baby wasn't born until almost 5 p.m. the next day.
Oh wow.
So it was a long time. I was in my husband says like 21 hours. And again, like I was not really aware of what time it was. All I know is that I went into active labor and it was like the middle of the night, dark, and then it was November, so 5 p.m. the next day was dark again that he was born. And yeah, I spent a lot of time in the shower. It was
Mm.
just kind of like back and forth in between like my bedroom and our shower. And like I had a couple other stations in our apartment that I was moving around, but
Mm.
just trying to ride the waves of the contractions and really just praying, honestly. Like you get to the point in labor where you're like, I don't know how I'm going to keep doing this, but I have to. Like this baby's going to be born, obviously. So just give me the strength to keep going. And there was there was one point where I was just like oming. I was going
Mm.
like through all of the contractions. And that helped. That really did help. And I think like the vibration of, they say that's like a strategy to do, like the vibration from your throat helps create relaxation in your pelvis,
Yeah.
which we all know that. And um, I really wanted to have like a pain, quote unquote, pain-free birth. That was my whole thing, and it did not
Mm.
happen. I don't want to lie, like it was so intense.
Mm.
But I'm 5 months postpartum, and I cannot tell you what the contractions actually felt like. I don't remember. I don't
God's
remember.
design, baby. God's design.
And I already won another one.
Yeah,
So it's like,
exactly.
it wasn't that bad.
Tolerable. Oh
Yeah.
man, that's hilarious.
So yeah, shower. I really wanted to birth my baby in the birth tub that I got, and that didn't
Mm.
happen. That was a whole tragic event that happened in the early throes of active labor. We realized the tub wasn't going to work, and I cried. And
Oh.
yeah, that was sad. But
Wait,
babies decide
why wasn't it
why
gonna
didn't it
work?
work.
Yeah.
Oh, it was just like the tub hose that was connected to our shower, like the water came out a yucky color and into the tub that was sterile with a
Uh,
clean liner and everything, and it just automatically, we were like, I can't, that's not healthy. Like if I
yeah.
get into that tub after that water got in there, it's not sterile anymore, and if my water was risk of infection. So
Mm-hmm.
uh that was such a downer in the
Yeah,
in
bummer.
that stage of labor. But I just believe that like the baby has their own story. Like it's their birth story. It's
Mm,
not real. Like of course it's my birth story too, but like
it's theirs too, yeah.
that's my philosophy, is that they're coming into this world with like their own, I guess you could say, like karmic contracts, and like his story is his own, and the way that he wanted to be born was his own on the day that he wanted to be born. So um, that's a whole like thing of surrender and just letting your body do what it has to do, because you don't have any control. And that's kind of what I've learned a lot through, I mean, from beginning of pregnancy through birth into postpartum, was like I have no control.
Mm,
and and that's something that is, I'm learning, really challenging for me. So um we all have our own lessons that we learn through birth into postpartum, and our birth story, our birth in general, is there to teach us and to help us grow. And I wanted it to be a pain-free birth in the bathtub with like just beautiful music and lights and like singing. And no, it didn't happen that way. Like I ended up tearing, which is why I went to go see Brittney.
mm.
And that was traumatic. And like having a baby and not wanting to tear, that was like my original story was, oh, I wanted to have somebody cut the baby out of me, because I was afraid of tearing first, the pain, and then also like changing the way my body looked.
Mm.
And then it happened, it's like there's so much resistance to what we don't want, and then it happens, and then there's like, okay, what is the story here? Like, what do we have to learn from this?
Yeah. Sounds like there's like a reconciliation that ends up happening. I mean, it
Yes,
happened for you.
yes. And I think that it's just, of course, like we don't want these things to happen, but that's where the lesson lies. And that's been my biggest teacher, I would say, in this
Mhm.
postpartum has just been time and time again. Every time I'm like, this isn't the way I want this to be. And then I just have to remember it's literally not about me anymore. It's not about what I want. I mean, it still is obviously, but like I have to lean into this surrender because it's not just about me anymore. It's about an entire other human being that I'm mothering and teaching how to be a human in this world. So
Yeah.
it's been a very interesting, telltale journey into motherhood for sure.
Mm. Yeah. I feel like that phrase of surrender and trust,
Mm,
it's it's the essence of birth.
yes.
And you'll learn it. You'll learn it either way, however it ends up, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and whether you learn it during the birth process or in postpartum,
Mm-hmm.
like it does happen if you choose it.
Yeah. I mean, it almost is, it's like that word is so annoying to me now because it's just like, it's
Yeah.
like I know that I have to do it. Like, I know I have to surrender, but how
Right.
do you surrender to something that's like frustrating or makes you feel sad or painful? Like how, and so that's the lesson, and some people are way more ahead of that in their journey than I am. And it's easy to look at somebody else's Instagram video of them birthing their baby and see it as like being quote unquote pain free, which is what I wanted. And I'm like, well, how did they do that? Like, how, and then there's different philosophies, of course, and you can go into all of the different birth pages and see what people are saying about it. But like, really, you have to figure it out in your own self what that means for you. It's not, nobody else can teach that to you. And even like hiring somebody else to teach you how to have like quote unquote a pain-free birth or and like I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying nobody has the secret keys to it. It's
Oh my
it's
God.
within you. It's like your own hurdles, your own darkness, your own stories, your past. Everything is you. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that some of these programs and like some of these birth doulas and mentors, like they're supportive, obviously, but it's you have to do the work yourself.
100%. I couldn't agree more because like I've mentioned, the more you kind of learn about birth and the more
Mm-hmm.
you even like take in all the stories and but I almost also it's funny, it's like birth and business. I kind of think about almost
Yeah.
similarly. Like no one can tell you how to formulate your business in a way
Right.
that's going to work for you and make you
Mm-hmm.
feel successful. What is even your success? And same thing
Mm-hmm.
for birth, right? No one's going to be able to tell you how to birth your baby and that honestly, that's why I've had a lot of qualms with even my work lately.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had to reconcile for myself, what is it that I'm actually doing for people? Am I trying to give them these like fix it tools, these
Yeah.
little whatever like, yeah, you can always add more tools to your toolbox,
Yeah.
and that can be great, and what you end up using might not be any of that at all, but it is so what I've at least for myself, I'm like, "Okay, let's reframe how it is that I'm showing up as a provider or as a witness, whatever." Like, usually that's all what I am. Like, I feel like I'm just a witness and I am a guide back to you. Like,
Yeah.
I hate that people think of even my profession as like an authority, like, am I normal? And or like,
Yeah,
am I functional? Like, okay, let me teach you how to check yourself. Like, let
you
me
need to
teach
know
you.
that.
Yeah, and not even from
Right.
just like a birth and postpartum perspective, but like I really wish that more people understood that, like that they're their own authority and
Mm.
like this is a totally different tangent, but I don't know, I just have to mention it. Human design has really helped me understand that for myself and helped
That's
me
so
like
cool.
relay that out or trying to relay that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like kind of coming back to just that word, that phrase of surrender. It's funny
Oh
because
yeah.
when you're like, yeah, I know I have to do it, but how do you do it? Like that's
Right.
literally how I think
That's what
too.
you're supposed to do. You have to figure it out yourself.
Yeah,
And that's when I say, like, I mean, and of course, everybody's story, everybody's baby, everyone is different. So everybody has to go through this lesson how they're supposed to. And that's kind of, I relate to what you're saying about like how do you want to show up as a provider after giving birth? I feel the same way. It's like, how am I going to show up now as a doula,
mhm,
supporting women and through birth? Like, I don't even know if I belong in that. I don't know. That's a whole question I'm kind of having right now with myself. But like in the hospital, it's such a different story because a lot of the times we're seeing that authority, that like inner knowledge being taken away because the minute that you ask somebody else to do it for you, that lesson that you had the potential of learning through your own body is now in the hands of somebody else. And I'm like, that's a whole new lesson in itself. And I just feel like sometimes that's the lesson, you know, like
yep,
you have to experience that before you can. It's just levels, you know, different levels. But
totally.
um,
I think it's a really like really good inquiry for you as a doula. And like, I mean, I want to be a mom one day. And the
mhm,
question is like, how do I want to show up as a mom? And
yeah,
as a pregnant woman, do I want to do this in the system? Do I want to do this
mhm,
differently also? And
mhm,
I don't think I've never talked about it openly actually on the podcast. I've never talked about it like fully at all, honestly, with anyone other than my dad this past
oh,
weekend and my partner, of course. Um, but I've been learning so much about free birth and
yeah, oh,
listening to
I'm
that.
so into it.
Oh, girl. Okay, so then now what I'm thinking is two different thoughts. Um,
Yes.
how to show up as a doula or a birth keeper outside of the system. I feel like
Mhm.
that's kind of the answer, right?
Yep.
Like you just can't do it in the system the way you want to do it, especially when, yeah, it's like most of the time the women that are showing up there, they have a completely different mindset about birth,
Mhm. Mhm.
um, and their choices and authority and sovereignty
Mhm.
and all of that. And yeah, like you mentioned too, it's almost like you kind of have to do it the hard way to then learn the
Yes.
lesson that you're gonna do it a different way the next time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, it is very fascinating. I feel like I've listened to stories like that too,
Yes.
where they had that um systemic, medicalized, traumatized
Mhm.
birth. Then maybe they did a home birth, and even then it wasn't what they wanted. How like however they see that as traumatic or, you know, or not. But then have a free birth, truly physiological birth, undisturbed, but supported by whoever they desired to have there or not. Like
Right.
there's so many variations of it, but
Yes.
it's pretty incredible to hear about it.
It's, I think birth can be really redemptive, and that's
Mhm. I love that word.
where I want to be. I want to be on the happy, exciting, like beautiful, joyful side of birth. I don't want to be on the side of birth that is pressured, chaotic, scheduled. Um, there's so many different nuances to birth, and it's really interesting when you start listening to different stories. And I feel like that in itself is something that's been taken from us
Mm,
because we've just been shown this very prescribed this is
Oh,
what you do. This is what everyone does. And
okay.
it's like, we're all different. All of our bodies are different.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And out of curiosity, because I had been listening to a lot of the free birth stories,
Mm-hmm.
especially, I mean, yeah, just the stories
Yeah.
um on the podcast, but I went and watched what's it even called? What to Expect When Expecting, like
Oh
the
my
book.
gosh.
I watched the
Yes.
movie on Netflix just like because I've
That's
seen it
such a good
before,
movie.
but just to like look at it through a different lens completely, I was just jaw on the floor. Also, I fell asleep because I was just like, I don't even want to like take this in
Mm.
again, you know? In a way, I was kind of subconsciously maybe like, let's just not. And,
Yeah,
but I mean, just so that, you know, people who are listening, if they haven't seen it, I think it follows four different couples
I
and
think so.
their pregnancy journey, their story. Like
Yeah.
one has infertility issues, and one has twins, and another one just like was in the birth world in some way, shape, or form, and had the worst pregnancy and scary things and whatever, all the things. It's so
Hmm.
fascinating. Actually, I think there are like six different birth stories in that technically. Um,
I don't remember, but it's so funny. I remember watching that while I was pregnant, and I was like, this is what we all saw, and this is the perception of birth that we just have like ingrained in our head.
yeah,
And there's a lot of unlearning that needs to happen. And when I talk about my story with some people, they're like, oh my God, I could never do that. And I'm like,
just the home birth
well,
stuff, or
yeah, the home birth, yeah. When just, like my way of doing things, that's kind of a little bit different from a lot of people.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, when you know all of the things that I do, because I've just gotten so deep into it because I'm very interested in it. I'm a woman and I love babies and I want to have a lot of babies. So I want to know a lot about birth. And I've watched a lot of videos. I've listened to so many podcasts. Like I've done a doula training. I've seen things from the hospital perspective. I've seen things from the home birth perspective. So it's just like when you know all of that, it's like I could never birth in a hospital. Like I feel safer being in my own home, in my own authority. If it's an emergency and I'm hemorrhaging and a true hemorrhage, I need a transfusion, like I'm gonna go to the hospital. But like
But
other
even
than
then,
that,
who's even to say how much?
right.
I mean, so I listened
Hmm.
actually recently on the Free Birth Society podcast,
Yeah,
uh, the complete guide to hemorrhage or something like that with
yeah,
Yolanda. And in that, I was just like, like just nodding my head, yeah, yeah, true, 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 true. And that makes sense. And the thing that came to me at the end, because I think they briefly mentioned it, but it's like, when did we get so afraid of our blood? And
right.
I was like,
Well,
this is why, like, period work and reclamation of your cycle, like, that feels
hmm,
so groundbreaking for some. And yet it
yeah,
also lays the foundation for having something like a sovereign physiological home birth.
I think that's so true. And there's just so many different things I could say to that. Like, for example, being on birth control for 10 years. Like
Same.
completely disconnected from my cycle. And so I intentionally went off of birth control for 2 years before I got pregnant. And I recommend that to all of my friends. All of us have been on birth control for so long. And just like really getting to know your body, like not only giving yourself time to detox from all of those synthetic hormones, but also getting to know your body, getting to understand like what it feels like. And I know you're so into this and I love it. It's
Love
like
it.
your thing. And I'm just,
I love having other people say it though, too, because then I don't feel
yeah.
so alone in it as well, you know?
Oh my gosh. I actually haven't gotten my period back and I miss it.
Hmm.
I haven't had my period in 15 months now. And I can't wait for it to come back. And it's going to be different now that I've had a baby. I'm just excited to have it again. And it's crazy. Like when I got pregnant, everyone was like, oh my gosh, now you don't have to get a period anymore. And now that I'm like still breastfeeding, obviously. It hasn't come back, and I'm just like sitting on the edge of my seat, like, am I ovulating?
Yeah.
Am I PMSing? Like, what are all these hormones? And my hormones are still trying to regulate themselves, but like,
Sure.
I can't wait for it to come back so I can actually like get close and comfy with my cycle again
Mm.
and lean into all of the stuff that you're teaching, Brittney, because I just think it's so cool. And I think more women need to A, get off of birth control, and B, just we need to be more empowered in our bodies because we are amazing. We are so creative. We can create life with our bodies. Like I look at my son every single day and I'm like, I grew you in my body.
Hmm.
And not only that, but like he's growing every single day with just the breast milk that I'm giving him. So like I'm still like he's only eating breast milk, no formula, breast milk. Did I say that right? I don't know. No formula, where we haven't started solids yet. So like I'm still growing this thing outside of me now, but like it's nobody else on our planet can do that. Obviously animals can, but like
Yeah.
we as women are so powerful where we have this power to like become mothers, which is like so many lessons, and to do it naturally, unmedicated, you just it's I can't recommend it enough.
Mm.
I I know it seems so daunting to some people, and it's like, yes, it is. It was so intense. It's the most intense thing I've ever done in my life, but I did it. And now whenever I'm having like doubts about myself, whenever I'm sitting here feeling like having a pity party for things that I didn't accomplish in my day, I'm like,
Like,
if
hang
I
on.
can if I can birth a baby. I went through 24 hours of labor unmedicated. Like, if I can do that, I can literally do anything. And that's the power, and I feel like we deserve to take that back. I feel like we have had it taken from us. We've had it normalized that we need an epidural, that the pain is just so intense that you can't do it without the help of the hospital. Like, that's a lie. And hospital births can be so traumatic, and I don't think pregnant women know that. I think they go into it thinking like these people care about me, they want the best for me, and that's a lie. You're just another number in their system.
Yeah.
Cesarean births are so common now, and they make the hospital so much money.
I was just gonna say, it's like a hospital birth can be traumatic. It can be highly expensive.
Hmm.
They're just, yeah, there are a lot of things that I'm learning now, that I always had
Yeah.
maybe a feeling about that.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm someone who, well, yeah, lots of beliefs can go on and they can all
Yeah,
be different, right? Everyone's so different, but
of
it's like,
course.
I don't even think, and it's funny because I've changed so much just within the
Yeah.
last 4 years, but like, I was shocked that my grandma has not had a pap smear, like 2 years ago or something like that. I'm like, Grandma, you've had, well, technically she's had six babies. One was a stillborn, I believe. Um, but 5 children. And whenever she got to the United States, which was in 1980, she
Hmm.
never had a doctor's appointment or pap smear. And I'm like, what? Why?
I know.
Like, that is
I
so
know.
ridiculous. Like, you should get a thing. Like, I don't know why balloons are going up on your
That's
screen.
so
That's so
funny.
funny. The little reactions from the iPhone are so funny. Oh
Hilarious.
man. But I'm like, now I haven't gone to see my
Yeah.
doctor for a
Oh
PAP
yeah.
or anything like that. And
Yeah.
granted, like I'm glad I had it at one point because I did have some I had
Mm.
HPV, but the recommendation because I was healthy
Yeah.
generally was keep living your life, it's going to resolve itself. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, cuz I'm healthy. And if I weren't
Right.
healthy, maybe and something emergent came up, then
Right.
you have Western medicine for that, but also you have all these holistic things to look at.
Yes. I
But
know.
yeah, the cesarean rates and
Mm.
all of that, you just look into all those research, like the cascade of interventions that you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Even watching, I mean, it's crazy. Just it is how you are indoctrinated.
Yeah.
Like I have friends who are in nursing, labor and delivery, or in an OB/GYN thing, and it's like the layers, you know, that are there. It's like, okay, like you can believe what you want to believe. Um,
Yeah.
but I feel like
Well,
for me, that doesn't feel like truth.
I feel like that's going to resonate with a lot of your listeners just because of what you already share and
Mm.
the connection that most of us are creating with our pelvis. And like once you start diving into that work, you start to find the truth because, like we've been so disconnected for so long. And there's a reason. There's a
Hmm.
reason to all of that. Like, why do you think when I went to go get my IUD taken out, I that was such a traumatic experience for me because the doctor literally made me feel so much shame for not being on birth control. She was like, "Are you married?" And I was like, "No."
What?
She's like,
What does
"Are
that
you
have anything to do
are
with it?
you planning on having kids anytime soon?" I'm like, "It's literally none of your fucking business." Like,
Right.
why does it matter? She's like, "Do you want to know about any other forms of birth control?" I'm like, "No, I'm good. I've had all of them. So I already know about them all." Um, like at that point I had been on it for so long. And of course, like my partner is now my husband. But at that time when I went off of birth control, I was like, listen, I'm going off of birth control. If we get pregnant, we're having a baby. That's where my stance was at the time. And obviously, like we all get to choose, but I made it very clear to him, like, if we're having unprotected sex and we get pregnant, that's we're having a baby. Like you need to have that conversation with whoever. If you're not going to be on birth control, you need a know how to track your cycle and your fertility, but also like you
Yeah.
might be faced with some choices and it's better to be prepared and
Right.
have that conversation with whatever you choose to do. But like we ended up getting pregnant and it was not planned, but of course, like it kind of was planned because I was tracking my cycle and we were having unprotected sex. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Not trying.
that was exactly what I said. I'm like, this is a blessing to me. Like, so many couples struggle with fertility nowadays and like are having to try for months and months and months. And we were so healthy and we had been like doing so many different things that we just amazingly we were having a 2 hour sex date, as Kimanami says, and like
Nice.
that was the day. That was the day the baby was like, okay, here I come.
Oh, just
And
like
so,
conceived in so much love, it sounds like.
yes, it was. It was very intentional and like I said, it wasn't an accident. Some people are like, "Oh, were you trying to have a baby?" Like, I mean, kind of.
Yeah. You were open. You were open to it.
Like, I was hoping to have more time to get more into my sexuality. I That was
Mm.
kind of what I had wanted to do, but the baby was like, "Oh, my time to shine. Here I come."
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm.
But I just think like if you are interested in the slightest in home birth and or like free birth even, like follow that path. Follow that instinct. Follow that notion inside of your body because um yeah, like that's our right as women to be able to birth our baby in sovereignty. And yeah, being healthy is super important. And if you don't have a healthy pregnancy, then that might not be an option for you. So I think like getting healthy before you get pregnant is actually the best way to start with that. If you're listening and you're like, oh, that sounds interesting to me, and I wonder, like, I'm not pregnant yet, but like, what can I do to start? Because I was already in the birth world before I got pregnant. I was doing a lot of like cleaning up my body
Mm.
in the months leading up to getting pregnant. Um, just to make sure that it was like the healthiest, best potential for us to have that option to have a home birth. Because, if you have pre-existing conditions or health concerns that don't make you a good candidate for home birth, then I personally, there's some people who would say like, oh, you should still do it. And I personally would say like, you probably want to consult some type of expert. Uh, I'm not saying go to the hospital. I'm just saying like maybe consider hiring a midwife or a sovereign midwife. There's a lot of different options, but um, yeah, I think health and pregnancy need to go hand in hand for home birth, and that's really setting you up for success. Because that was one thing that my midwife at my birth said. She's like, um, the reason that you were able to stay home, and like, I'm not taking her word for it. Like, I also believe this in my own body, but like, her observation was that I was so healthy my entire pregnancy. Like, my blood pressure never changed. My weight was always right where it was supposed to be. I had no swelling. I was eating all of the right things. Whenever any type of symptom came up, for example, I was dealing with a chronic yeast infection, I was like immediately on it with all holistic stuff. But like, she didn't even do the diabetes test on me just because she was like, you're so healthy. I'm not concerned about it at all. And she said, like, a lot of women would have probably not had the um, endurance
Mm.
to get through that long of a labor because of their health. But like, I was eating the entire time, snacking, lots of protein, lots of electrolytes throughout my entire pregnancy and also throughout my labor. So I think just like the stage that you set yourself up for throughout preconception, pregnancy, and also labor just is like, it's the best way to set yourself up for success. And you obviously know that, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners do too, with like pelvic health. Just
Yeah.
being in that like deep connection with your body throughout the entire process, even if you're not pregnant and you're thinking that maybe in a couple years you want to get pregnant, like now is the time to start.
Right.
2 years in advance is amazing. I wish I had that much time. I had probably 6 months of like really, really, truly healthy. But now my baby is so healthy. I'm still so healthy. Like, you really see it.
You
And
reap
I
the
think,
benefits, that's for sure.
yes, I think we are uh, becoming a small minority. I
Mm.
hope that it grows, but like, more and more people are relying on the system versus their own intuition in
Yeah.
their own bodies for their health. And I just feel like outsourcing that knowledge is kind of the beginning your of the decline, maybe I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Of just giving it all away essentially.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I would hope that the more exposure people have to the range of experiences that have been had in the
Mhm.
range of environments and the range of modalities used or experts consulted and the practices that keep you in deep connection to yourself, you'll end up finding what works for you, right?
Yes.
And that's why I feel like I don't try to caveat everything, but I usually, when I'm saying something as a recommendation, I'm like, well, that worked for me. That worked
Right.
for me. Something else might work for you. Like,
For
yeah,
sure.
Yeah, you can take anything that we've talked about and be like, yeah, that worked for me. And then also it's like your perception of what worked for you is your perception,
Totally.
right? It's so wild. I mean, we can go down all kinds of rabbit holes with that kind of mindset. But uh so cool that you've taken back that power and are I feel that from you. Like you're instilling that into not only your clients and but your family, like but your son
Yeah.
and your friends and whoever else will listen,
Yes.
which people will.
I am very passionate about it, and when people get me going, it's like my husband will sit there and be like, "Hey, these people don't want to hear all the stories about how you were." I'm like, I'm gonna keep sharing because more people need to hear it, even if they don't want to hear it.
Oh
Like,
my God. Yeah.
we all need to know what our bodies are truly capable of, and I feel like that was why I was supposed to have that experience, and
Mhm.
I'm so so grateful for it, even though it didn't go entirely the way that I had hoped, and I still did experience a degree of birth trauma. um I'm very grateful for the experience that I had, and I'm also very excited to do it again. I yeah, it's amazing.
Mm.
Birth is so amazing.
Women are amazing.
I just freaking love birth so much. I love watching birth videos. I love hearing stories. I
Same.
love just it's like every time it never gets old, and I just can't believe that I get to do it, you know? I'm so grateful.
So rad.
It's crazy. It's so intense, but it's like that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah, seriously. I cannot wait to experience it firsthand and however that
Yeah.
happens, whatever happens happens. But oh my gosh, anytime you find a birth video that you're like, you need to see this, please send it
Yeah.
my way. I love
Oh.
watching birth videos. They're the raddest things. I just yeah, the way babies enter this world. I mean, that's a whole nother thing, but Uh, are you taking clients at all outside of the system within home birth
Mhm.
situations, postpartum care, anything like that?
I am open. I I was having this conversation with my husband the other day, and I'm like, I still don't really know how I want to show up in this community, but if the right connection comes, I'm super open to it. And I trust that those people will find me. I'm not like really advertising that I'm taking clients right now, but like I know that like the families I'm supposed to serve are gonna find me. So yes, I am. And postpartum, oh my gosh, that's a whole different podcast episode, Brittany. We need to do
Yeah,
that one.
we will do that one. Maybe when there's a little more
I
time for you.
Yeah, and I am so passionate about postpartum as well, and I would love to serve women postpartum too. So that's not something that I'm advertising either, but like I just oh, there are so many things that I want to do, and like I'm so open to anybody who is like, I need support. Like, I just want to support women and families and babies. I love it. It's what I'm like, it just lights me on fire. So, um, yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. That's putting it out there.
Hell yeah. Well, okay, so then if anyone did want to
Mhm.
reach out to you, I'll put your whatever
Yeah.
information you have to share in the show notes.
Hmm.
Um, but damn, Emily, I am so grateful to have had you on here sharing your wisdom and your experience. And oh
Thank
my
you so
goodness,
much.
you're
Thanks
a
for giving
badass.
me this stage to stand on and just like
Hell
I
yeah.
hope that it was concise. You know, I'm still a little bit sleep deprived. It's 5 months postpartum, but if it wasn't, Yeah, anybody who is listening and has questions about my story or like what I did, or even from like the beginning to the end, I'm so happy to always talk. My DMs are open. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, just thank you so much, Brittany, for having me on and inviting me to speak about something I'm so passionate about. It's really such a gift, and I'm so grateful to know you too. I wish I could have shared more about like how you helped me and my close friends. We'll talk about that next time.
We can definitely do a postpartum episode. We'll do that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Emily,
Thank
again so
you.
much. I'm so honored to have heard your story. We'll see
Thank
you guys
you.
next time. Bye.